Hello, welcome to theCUBE here in Seattle at AWS headquarters. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. We are here for our halftime report. We're breaking down all the action that's happened. So much has happened in 6 months. It's almost like a full year happened in a half a year. This is the new AI cycle. We had a great lineup of 2 days of guests. Nandini Ramani, who's the VP of Search, Observability and Cloud Operability for AWS. Voted one of the most powerful female engineers in the industry. Great to see you. Thanks for coming on theCUBE. I love the AWS bling. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, John.
So this is a halftime report, mainly because there's so much has happened since reInvent. It's almost like reInvent could happen today, and it would be a slew of announcements, slew of activity, but it's only been compressed into a half a year. It's been a wild ride.
It's been a while.
What's the biggest thing going on right now for you?
So in my portfolio, if you look at what I own, it's OpenSearch for search. And OpenSearch is an interesting, multifaceted service because it's a search engine. It's also a vector database. It's also a log analytics platform. So it's got multifaceted things. Each of them very applicable to this agentic world. And then I have the CloudWatch, which is my flagship product for both Amazon and AWS. For troubleshooting and observability. Also have CloudTrail for governance and things like that. So it's a multi-faceted, and I have other services as well. But this portfolio of things in an agentic world, I think, are disproportionately important, if you think about it, like everything. And I want to tell you a funny little anecdote. I started my career in hardware. So I'm not a traditional CS engineering. So I think about the GPUs I used to build, and now we've come full circle with NVIDIA and our own GPU, like the things we are building with Inferentia and Trainium. So I always feel like, oh my God, I've come full circle back to the passion that I've always had.
It's interesting. I went the other way around. I was a software engineer, ended up working for a hardware company that got out of the software business and then learned hardware. But if you think about that comment you made, because I think it's really ties to the mega trend, which is we are living in a systems thinking world right now. And hardware, back in the day, you had to think about the system, the motherboard, the connections, the processors, the circuits, the bus. And if you think about what you're working on at AWS, you're kind of like the data glue layer.
Yes.
You're the lifeblood. The data is key to understanding everything, finding things, connecting things, moving things from point A to point B, kind of like a backplane.
It is the backplane, and it's also, one is the data gathering. How do you do it efficiently? Do you do it in tiered? How do you deal with structured versus unstructured data? How do you play well, because we have S3 tables, and how do we back into that neatly? We can go all the way down to the silicon because AWS has Inferentia Trainium chips that are very suited for GenAI. So anyway, I'm very excited. I'd forgotten your question, so let's...
No, this is good. We're kicking off with a good riff here because I think that sets the table for the importance of observability, the importance of search. I mean, if you go back a decade or two, search was, search engine, structured data, it's hard in the enterprise, easier, Google did it, okay. Now, search is a key piece because getting data, not from an end user, a process might need data.
Yep.
Enterprise search is the hottest category in enterprise right now because with AI, you can abstract away all the complexities and find what you're looking for. And then the observability between systems becomes what was once data exhaust to data value. Again, so we're in the world where that data can be used as input into
to give
training.
You insights and feed insights. It can be used to train agents in this agentic world. So there's so much value in all of these various things.
Okay, so customers right now that I talk to on the enterprise side that have cloud are looking at them, I don't have a lot of CapEx. I don't have $100 million laying around unless I'm JP Morgan. They have a ton of money. But they're like, okay, I need to build the new system. I got the cloud. I got some data on-prem. I got an edge. It's essentially distributed computing. Okay, we know what that looks like. They're thinking, how do I architect? How do I use my data observability? How do I understand how to find what I'm looking for maybe a neural network that they're building with vector embeds? All these things are factoring into the pre-dawn era we're in for agents.
Yes.
And they're kind of in setup mode.
Yeah.
How do you view that? How do you guys look at that? Because you now have the portfolio, you got the large scale AWS cloud. Is that like a mind shift for the customer? Is it just a natural extension?
It's going to be a natural extension is how we see it. So you got to meet the customer where they are. As much as we are, on the one hand, talking about agents and all the advances, don't forget, we still have monoliths and mainframes, and the spectrum is vast. And of course, GenAI can help you in the migration, and it can make plans for you, and it can even refactor COBOL into Java. So we have a wide spectrum here where we have to meet the customer where they are. And in terms of agents, I think we have to see where the puck is going, and the puck is going very fast. To your point, everything we thought about at reInvent, we went from prompt engineering to vibe coding to now agents in like 2 quarters. Yeah. So it's evolving. But on the good news, at our foundation, AWS is, by default, we are secure. By default, it's in our operational excellence is in our DNA. We're known for it. And end of the day, the differentiation is going to be, how do you consume all this data? We have vast amounts of it. Yeah. What is the easiest way? What is the user experience going to be? Do you want agents for every small little task? That's going to be like, I remember when we went from monoliths to microservices, we shifted too far on one end. So that's the thing with agents to see. It's easy. Now we have MCP servers, not just to talk to the tools, but from agent to agent. So we got to watch where it's going and be thoughtful about what is that user experience. How would an operator, a human operator, work with this array of agents?
The MCP is a good highlight. I think that's one of the hottest areas I see right now around models talking to each other. That's going to be a big component.
We are really pushing. I think it's a very valuable thing.
It's a huge trend. Folks watching, check out MCP. It's the most cutting edge thing. What that's pointing to, in my opinion, I want to get your reaction, is on the operational side, there's all kinds of built-in stuff. You just mentioned some legacy. On the build side, where the breakthroughs are happening, the tooling's getting better. We're seeing a rapid advancement in tooling. So you got, on one side, massive innovation surge, open source models, foundation models, computer vision's rocking, but the tooling is getting so good that you're starting to see the apps being built faster. Meanwhile, you got the whole platform engineering, DevOps culture going, okay, we got Kubernetes, it's stable, we're ready to go. So you have this collision, and it's a good collision. It's an intersection of platform engineering, stability, to kind of Wild West.
It's a little bit of both. So on the one hand, these agents are proliferating, if you will, right? So you need a way to observe the agents. They are complex, distributed systems that are going to go all over the place. You need some way to observe those agents. Like, otherwise, you wake up in the morning and the agent's done a bunch of things. And in fact, I've had customers ask me, with my developers, we have performance cycles, we know how they're doing. We're going to need things like that for agents. We need proactive detection of vulnerabilities and things like that in code before it goes into production. There's like so many layers and aspects to this.
All right, let's get into the operations side, because now the operating teams, whether it's cybersecurity or platform engineering, they're trying to set up a stable environment. They even use the word guardrails. It's been overused many times, but I get that. The ball's bouncing around the guardrails around the innovation, and the innovation is, I'm using tokens. The tokens are in massive demand for these systems, and the more tokens that are needed, the more large scale I need. So you have a kind of an auto-scaling kind of vibe going on where it's like, what do I need? Now, perfect for cloud because it's elastic. You can say, hey,
you use as much as you want.
How do you view that? Because there's been a big discussion of price per token. That's more of a benchmark on who's got the better model. New models bring new usage patterns. New usage patterns bring more exhaust. So everything's kind of like in your area right now. Unpack that. What is going on?
So pricing is a complicated, challenging thing. We are all trying to figure that one out. But I agree with you. The advantage we have is we do have the storage layer. We have the compute layer. We can play around with what is the best experience. And if you think about compute and how it's evolved, we went from like buying these boxes that would just sit there to now ephemeral workloads. And I feel agents, this is my opinion, of course, nobody has a crystal ball, but we believe agents are going to be those ephemeral things that do a job to be done, and disappear, like spinning up Lambda functions or things like that. That's one model of work. The other is you could have a super agent that orchestrates all of these, because the tokens, the models, that's going to evolve at its pace. Like all models are getting better, things. There, it's more about how do you make it cost effective. Because if every new thing you do is a brand new search, it's going to swallow up a bunch of compute. So we are working on memory and how do we...
Systems.
Exactly, systems, which we are really good at.
Yeah.
So that's where I think we can add value for our customers because we know our customers, we know how to meet them, and we have the cloud.
Yeah. So one of the things I asked Matt Garman when he was in earlier was, you have Amazon Web Services as a huge horizontal scalable platform. We've been covering that for 15 plus years. Now you have this petri dish. We're almost kind of in a mode where we don't know what we don't know. The enablement that's going to come from how you guys understand your resource and then offer that up to customers and partners and their customers. I think this next year will be very telling. I think new things will bloom from this. What's your perspective on that enablement? Because you guys have a unique perspective. Things like LLM routing is a topic people talk about. Routing, and you talk about memory. These are model layer memory. So not computer memory.
No, it's different memory.
HBM
yes,
and solid state. There's some stuff going down there too. We
could go
we don't want to go there
as we want,
but data having new characteristics.
Yes.
It looks like it's a large scale system to support the demand for agents. How do you view all that?
Yeah. So I'm sure Matt covered this way better than I can possibly. But I think while this petri dish is evolving, we have some core tenets. Like I said, we're secure by design. We're really known for responsible AI. We take very good care with guardrails and give you the tools because these agents can go rogue as well. And we have all of this data. We can curtail that within the AWS. And one advantage, in fact, I want to bring you to a launch that we did at reInvent, which is still relevant in an ever-changing world. AWS has over 17, 19, whatever, since S3 was born. We have data on which we call correction of error. We have a whole knowledge base of failure modes for our infrastructure. That is something we know. How it fails, it's our data. We built a knowledge base. We released an investigations assistant in CloudWatch. And you can see it has cut down time for so many customers. The nice thing is this is applicable to everybody. You can take Cedargate, which is a healthcare company. They have seen their troubleshooting times go down from 2 hours to 30 minutes. Amazon Music, using vector databases. So what they're doing is they have 100 million songs of library of songs, and they're using OpenSearch to vectorize all of these, to create vectors and decorate that data. So when I do a search, it knows, oh, I like EDM, and I like, so it curates and feeds it. So GenAI is not a one thing, I think, and we have many of the components and ingredients from the ground up. Like I said, all the way from the silicon to the infrastructure layer. And next, we're also meeting the customers where they are, because not all customers, some of them have, like I said, mainframes running on their data center. We want to give them the ability to point at their data and get just as much value as they do when they are in our infrastructure vended side of that.
And you guys are also customer zero for all the technologies. Customers want to do the same exact thing for their data.
Exactly.
They have all that exhaust too.
Exactly.
On their workloads.
Exactly.
And they want agents to do stand-up services, pull them down at will.
Exactly. And we want to meet them where they are to do that. And one of the other great things about AWS, which we have always done, we drink our own champagne, if you will. Amazon is a big client, and they use all of our services, and then we expose it externally. So we continue to do that, so until we have confidence.
Okay, so have you given the memo out to your team that says, we all have to use AI and build the AI muscle?
100%.
What's been the reaction?
Yeah, so I will tell you, it's been an interesting journey over the last, 18 months or whatever it's been since this, we took that giant leap into GenAI. And the models have become incredibly better these days. So initially, we had skeptics. Even our customers weren't quite there. And my engineers were also like, it's clunky initially.
Change management.
But now, they're all over it. There are certain things that they do really well. And so we're seeing productivity gains across and we almost gamify it. So I've challenged my team to see who gets the most done with the smallest and how are they using it. And they do hackathons, John, and it's so fun to watch the creativity that's coming. Yeah. While it's strange, isn't it?
Has any engineer actually automated the PR FAQ process? My question I ask all the leaders.
It's pretty close. We're getting there. So even I use it extensively. I use Q, we use our own tools, and it spits out a lot of things. but you have to have an eye for it because I can tell when it's fully generated versus overlaid. So that art of taking what it gives you and overlaying, this is true not just in docs and things like that, is going to be very true in the operational stuff too. It'll tell you a bunch of things.
Yeah.
But you still need,
The human in the loop is critical.
It's critical.
Yeah,
So
I love Matt Carmen's comment, and he said, we're going to need ideas. Ideas are going to be the new resource because a lot of the coding and a lot of the augmentation assistance will come in from AI.
yeah.
And so love that perspective. And I totally agree with him. And I have to ask you, being an engineer, if you look at today's market, what has been the reaction? Because obviously the use cases right out of the gate are sales and marketing and engineering, coding.
Yeah.
What's been the reaction? I would say the hackathons, obviously, has any of innovation come out of that? How did they respond? And how do the non-engineers respond? Because now you're seeing people in the business side going, hey, I don't need to have a CTO for my startup. I don't need to have an engineer assigned to my product, or maybe not as many. I could code.
So you're right. I think we're in a transitionary phase. I firmly believe, yes, we will need fewer people, possibly. But in the fullness, once we adapt to this new world, I think we'll need more people because we'll be churning out so much more stuff. And ultimately, humans are the ideators and collaborators and all of that, and we live in this three-dimensional world till the robots come. But so I firmly believe we will just move up stack. If you look at historically technological advancements, and this is just one more of them that's pivoting us, we've adapted to the new thing. Not all jobs went away. We just up-leveled, upskilled. And so the new type of people we're going to need are not the coders that we used to hire because that can be done. Like, if you think about what we launched in OpenSearch for natural language querying capability, that world of, do you know SQL or PromQL or people, that world has disappeared already. We're going to have voice, we're going to have natural. So the type of people we need that adapt to this is going to change. Yeah. At least that's what I believe.
A lot more creativity, a lot more problem solving.
Exactly, a lot more problem solving. And we're in that transition phase where everybody thinks we're going to need fewer because agents will do. Yeah. But I think we'll need people on top to create more.
You know what's interesting is I'm seeing a bifurcation where back when I went to college, we were called software engineering. They actually had the word engineering. They went to coding, computer science, and then, so it's all computer science now. But you're seeing some of the, I call them alpha coders, or the top-notch software engineers. They're going lower in the stack to squeeze value, almost old school 90s days, like memory management. I want the
That's going to become so important. That's why I gave you the example of NVIDIA. So when I was doing hardware, we got distributed. I went to software. But the detail it takes to make compute viable and work well for these cases. There's so much innovation to be had in the storage layer. We have, Iceberg and Parquet file. There's so much of innovation in other places that...
There's engineering to be done.
Exactly. There's lots of engineering to be done.
And then at the top of the stack where the application layer is, that's where the business logic is. That's where we're starting to see still low code, no code, but still coding, voice prompting.
There's going to be different kinds of coding. So the traditional way of doing things will be more low level and up stack. But if you look at the evolution, we went from assembly to C, Java, Rust, Go. I just look at this as the next.
Okay, so back up. Let's go to the mainstream enterprise. Just pick, middle of the enterprise market, like a Main Street USA kind of enterprise, not like the big banks. They have operations, and they're like, okay, we've been doing this rack and stack and stuff. Now we move to the cloud. Their IT is working, but now they're like, okay, what do we do now? But you have discipline in operations, process. Some platform engineering advancements. Those enterprises are going to be disrupted, and they're going to be enabled.
They're going to be enabled.
How do you see that disruptive enablement happening? What's the key for an ops team? Yeah, we've been doing DevOps, DevSecOps, that's all in play. Now we have all these ideas coming in from the business side. Who's going to code them?
The world is going to converge on all of those above. You're already seeing security, observability coming together because it's all the same data end of the day. And this data is going to be generated in real time now. The amount of logs and everything is emitting, everything's an endpoint with data coming. So this disruption for those ops teams, in some ways, it's only going to get more complicated, I think, because now you're going to have to manage all these agents. You have to there's two types of things. One is you have to manage the agents and understand what these agents are doing. The second is the human and agent interactions for troubleshooting. How do you do that as well? So it's going to be a multi-pronged thing. Same thing is true for security. How do you proactively do pen testing and vulnerability, all of that in code? But then nobody can 100% catch it. For there's going to be an attack surface as well. So you also need to do it post. But you'll need fewer pen testers because you know what
I've heard the term minus 0 days.
Minus 0 days,
Meaning
exactly.
there's already telemetry coming in where by scouring the dark web, you can see mobilization, things being constituted for attacks.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know this is a ransomware coming, hey, it sends a SOC an alert. That's happening. So you're in the position in AWS where you're sitting in a really key area. You have not only multiple pucks coming at you, you got to skate to like 3 pucks.
Exactly, because it could come from anywhere. And that's something we do well. I mean, knock wood, never want to say that, but you know what I mean. So those are some of the advantages, I think. And it'll enable a lot of these companies, not just SMBs, even the large ones, to move faster to this. It's almost like they're still stuck in many of them are struggling with that. This is going to force and give them momentum to move into the
other trend I want to get your reaction to, whether this is true or not. I've been researching it, but on the surface it seems like it's working. The big are getting bigger because they have a lot of data, so you're starting to see leverage from the operations that they're getting. The smaller companies are getting powerful because they can punch above their pay grade with cloud. The mid-range seems the one stuck in the middle between, do I go big or do I go small? I mean, it's almost like, do you agree with that generally, that general oversimplification? But because AI gives more superpowers to the people who are agile and who lean into the new technologies, and the big players have a lot on data.
And they have a lot of data. They also have more resources. And
the mid people,
it's harder on them to
agree?
Pivot on a dime. It is true, which is why we have to enable. Cloud still helps them the sooner they can come to it. Startups have this unique ability to just kickstart and go. I mean, I remember that not having to wear support, none of that. You're just liberated to go build what you want.
Or in the cloud, you are the IT.
Yeah, you are everything. Yeah.
DevOps is IT.
But I do think we are really on a journey to help SMBs. We have a startup ecosystem that we help our customers, and so Amazon does have many programs because it is harder because they have limited funds. It's harder. They're bigger than the nimble startups, but not as big as the giants. And so, but that is, several of them are going to become the next big thing. So you want to foster that work with them as well.
Would you say that you're in the data business, data ops business?
Definitely in the data ops business.
All right, so how does GenAI impact data operations? Is it looking like an SRE type model, data engineering? Is it going to be abstracted away? Because if you don't have the data telemetry, the data observability, you might not know what's going on. There could be, create hallucinations in the model. So not knowing everything, you got to know everything.
You got to know everything, which is why I said we not only do everything for the AWS ecosystems, which is the first step. We have to do that for AWS. In terms of your question about SRE versus DevOps persona versus SOC, and there's so many of these different, I think they're all going to start collapsing and converging. It's not clear whether the industry is going to create agents that are dedicated, ephemeral, come do that one thing and disappear. Are we going to hire an agent that can do anything? It can be an SRE and a engineer, and so I think we'll have to see how this evolves. To be honest,
I was talking to Colleen, and we talked about the notion of digital workforce, digital worker.
Yeah.
How does the roles change in ops and IT and in cloud, where the jobs are changing? Again, they're moving to different jobs. It's not like they're going away. Some stuff goes away that's redundant, mundane, undifferentiated, heavy lifting. But there's new opportunities. What does the workplace look like for operations?
Yeah.
I mean, are they wrangling data? Are they just managing agents, managing SLAs?
Many of them are going to be managing. We are never getting away from managing to SLAs. I firmly believe that. Even in a real-time world of agents doing things, we still have to be, 9, like S3s, 9, whatever. You need the 4 nines, whatever. Or you have to have SLAs on commits to custom. That's not going away. However, I do believe in this new world, how do you manage agent identities? How do they differ from human identities? The HR workforce is a real thing. We have some like customer was asking me, how do I know how many vulnerabilities were created by this agent? How do I know what good looks like and bad looks like? It's going to adapt and learn. And so we are going to have to support them where they are, because there's one aspect is we are very infrastructure bound, right? Like, so we have resources and tags and accounts and roles and all of that. But end of the day, an agent's going to be given permission similar to a human. Nandini logs on.
Delegation.
It'll delegate, and you have to give it some trust, and then you need to be able to provide feedback for it. And so there's a whole other thing that we're working on to see how do we manage these agents, because you need.
It's like putting your kid through school. You got to take them through a progression.
Yes, you do have to.
The thing about ops that's interesting is that the efficiency and the productivity has been the big top line story.
Yeah.
Where is the productivity gains coming, and what do you see customers doing? Where are they? You're meeting them where they are. Where's the productivity gains? Where are the people starting, and where are the customers that you talk to? What's going on in their mind? Take me through the day in life of a typical customer.
Yeah. So because these are all still evolving, the customers who last year were saying, yeah, I don't know, we're waiting to watch, everybody's on it now. That's why I said Cedar Gate is one in the healthcare space, SmugMug, which is a very different one. They're also using all these troubleshooting capabilities, and agentic reduced their troubleshooting by 50%, down to 20 minutes or something. So every second counts in business. The times you're not spending when an alarm goes off, et cetera, you can be innovating for your customers. So we are seeing this in a wide, and like I said, we start with us. Amazon Music is like having an on-call assistant. Kindle has reduced, so Kindle has a big support team. They've reduced their troubleshooting costs by 65 to 80%.
Yeah.
They were one of the early onboarders. So across the board, depending on how much adoption it has, the gains come from it. Coding is going to get much easier. It reminds me of like dating myself, but when IDEs came and code completion, like, we were like, it's magic. Now we're in a whole other world where you can feed it a documentation and it spits out everything you need. And so, but I wouldn't, it's also like, code is still code, no matter who writes it.
Yeah.
And somebody was telling me, it's fun and games when you do the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole process. We have a whole ORR process, which is like operational readiness.
Yeah.
You have to stand behind what you ship.
Yeah.
And so I still think there's
the resilience bars are high still.
Yeah, exactly.
You still got to meet the hurdle. Yeah, I wrote a game over the weekend. Great. It's not going to production.
It's not going to production. That step from going from something cool to production, there are so many layers to it, which is where I think my teams can help.
Yeah, you guys really are, again, I think.
At the heart of it.
I think you're the lifeblood. You're the bloodstream because data's flowing everywhere. Production is a big conversation that comes up a lot. What's your experience with customers that have all these POCs, all these experimentations going on? What's the process in production? It seems to be a backlog. I was joking with the customer, like, you need TSA pre-clear to get stuff into production. Is there a path? Are we waiting? They're all waiting. Can I get my turn? I mean,
and the other thing is, with hallucinate, we use automated reasoning for hallucination, so we can check it before it hits, et cetera. But I think we're seeing more in production, but the most we are seeing is actually still in training, leveraging it for developer productivity. Those are the use cases mostly. But there is a backlog, and when the floodgates open, we're going to see an uptick in production.
I mean, I want to get your thoughts on this, because now let's get back to some of the nerd stuff on the infrastructure, because I think what we're seeing is that as Seattle Seahawks were in here earlier, so I have to use a football metaphor. It's like in the red zone, where the ball is close to the end zone for unleashing the agent wave, because the infrastructure is getting smarter, faster, and so you're seeing models tuned for the hardware and the chips.
Yeah.
So you're starting to see workloads pick certain configurations for the workload. So you got not only the hardware or the configurations, the hardware and configuration and the workload is three things.
Yep.
Those can be mixed and matched, not one purpose fits them all. That's going to drive a big push into performance. So now you've got performance. So how has the Amazon investment in the CapEx, in Trainium, Inferentia, You see Anthropic tuning their stuff beautifully into the chips
Yep.
that you guys have. You got NVIDIA out there. You got a multitude of stuff. What have you seen in your group that's been a benefit of those performance gains?
So massive gains, twofold. One is the models evolving on their own. Second is when we get the next generation of the chips, because we are also in line, by the way. We are customer obsessed, so customers get first pick, and then my teams. And so it's incredible to watch one generation to another one. Even in CPU, like Graviton, the evolution that we've seen, every time it's like a nice big bump just from doing nothing. Having said that, though, the complexity is still, this is why Bedrock supports every model there is, because we believe in customer choice, and there is no one model to rule them all. We do firmly believe that. You have to fine tune it, you got to pick the use case and build one for that. And then we, like you said, we partner with NVIDIA and their latest, greatest chips. We're always optimizing on all of them. And in addition, Dave Brown has a whole team dedicated to make all of these.
Yeah, you have CloudWatch. Again, these are mission critical, important features. As the performance comes in, what are you seeing internally that you're doing with AI for the products that the customers can leverage? Is there anything that's come out in the past 6 months that you see, and maybe what's coming in at the reInvent that you're focused on, that you're doing, tapping into the research and knowledge of AWS? Yeah, you get the lobbying for the best chips and everything, okay, but there's a trend towards internal native AI usage for product advancements. Can you share some thoughts on what you're working on there?
The product itself, this is the one thing I was saying about if you look at investigations in CloudWatch. The ability to understand failure modes and the topology of which service is calling which in the AWS infrastructure, we have a whole knowledge base. So we can provide that into the first-party experience in our native tool, not just in CloudWatch, but also in OpenSearch. And we're leveraging our expertise to do that. That is thing one. Second, big advancements, vector database. OpenSearch is the vector database for Bedrock, the opinionated one. Obviously, we support all the others as well. So we are making a lot of investments in like the KNN algorithms. A lot of it is in open source, so many companies are joining us on this journey. We also work very closely with the S3 team on their S3 tables, and they have Iceberg support. We're also working with the SageMaker team, which is also, they have a lakehouse. So everything, you talk about us being a data store, we feed that to the aspect of you can do your machine learning and your notebooks and everything in one place, bringing zero ETL basically, just meet the customer where they are. So these are all things we are ourselves doing.
Yeah, the connective tissue between the services.
Yeah. The other thing is we have Systems Manager with runbooks. We are embedding all of those so that we can provide runbooks. And you can debate in an agentic world what will the runbooks do, but it will still use the runbooks in a different way.
I could see a scenario where GenAI would benefit a customer that says, hey, I want the GenAI to pick the infrastructure configuration
that's best suited
for the workload at any given context.
Which already, in fact, in Bedrock, we already have that. We support a feature for that routing. You can tell it, here are the choices, this is what I want, here are the constraints, and it'll go pick. Cost is the biggest one.
Well, I mean, remember the old policy days on routing? Cost, routing, best performance. We're kind of seeing that at a large scale for workloads.
Yeah. And currently it's still expensive, but I think we've seen the thing come down significantly already. And we're just at the beginning of this journey.
All right, what's the most exciting thing you're working on right now?
Oh my God, everything.
Pick a favorite child, or two.
I mean, so one thing I will leave you with, right? We are on a journey. We have so many services. We're we are heavily working on building solutions, bringing things together. In the spirit of, we now run OpenSearch analytics on top of CloudWatch. We support natural language across the board. We don't want to confuse customers. We want to make it as simple as possible so they land in one place and they can see everything they want. So I'm super excited about that. Very excited for this agentic journey. Already trying to, we're using MCP servers to, and tooling is going to be supremely important because we're moving from an API land to tools.
Yeah.
Products only, the model will only be as good as the tools it can invoke. So I
saw the news about Strands that came out.
Yes, Strands came out in May.
That came out of some scaffolding that was being built for something else.
And then we open sourced it in May.
Huge
And it's
success.
by the way, we are heavy into standards. I mentioned Iceberg and Parquet files. We're also supporting open telemetry because it's a great way. It democratizes. Otherwise, everybody's in their walled garden of my formats and my schema. So Strands supports OTel, and it'll spit out distributed tracing and everything. So your audience should try that out as well. And more to come. Watch this space.
All right, so now I have to ask the open source question, because one of the most exciting areas right now is I call the AI native developers. There are, folks writing code, startups coming. The large enterprises are cloud native already. They're becoming more AI native. They're looking at how to integrate into the cloud faster and having all those great models to work from. The innovation and the starvation that's going on in open source, they're hungry for more stuff. And yeah, there's some good coding in there. Go to Hugging Face, play with some models, all the Linux Foundation, Apache, all got great stuff. That's going to bring in a whole nother wave of builders. What do you offer that community? Because that's going to be a bridge for commercialization.
Yeah.
What's your vision on that open source transition? Because that's coming fast.
It's
with
coming
agents.
fast, and we are very supportive. I mean, look at what I run, right? OpenSearch is entirely, in fact, we gave it to the Linux Foundation. And in my background is from Java, which I open sourced and ran it in open source. And so I am a firm believer that innovation starts there, and we should foster a culture of it. So we are working, obviously, that's true for all of AWS. We're working with Hugging Face. We support DeepSeek as soon as it was launched. And so we take a very open approach to things. And in my team in particular, we want to partner with everybody. They're all coming now to Linux Foundation, helping us innovate in open source.
You brought up Sun, a little triggering moment, opens up my part of my brain. I think John Gage was the one who said network is the computer, and then Scott McNealy picked up on it. I love that phrase. It's a little early, then cloud happened, but networking is hot right now. If you look at the network advancements among the systems themselves and also at the edge, you're seeing a huge network fabric emerge. How does that factor into your group? Because now data is coming in
from the
across
network,
boundaries, in the network,
in the
for
network. So we launched in CloudWatch, we launched network monitoring. And if you look at troubleshooting, I talked a lot about the AWS infrastructure and then the applications that our customers build. But if you think about it, there's a whole internet layer. So when something goes down, you don't know where the problem is. It is in your firewall? Is it outside? So troubleshooting is going to extend far beyond. The edge is now.
There's no edge. It's
there's
the world.
There's just the world.
Distributed computing everywhere.
So there will be a whole lot more, and we have teams within AWS doing perimeter protection. We have teams there's lots of innovation happening.
And I have to ask you on a personal note. You mentioned at the beginning you had an experience in systems before software. There's a big trend going on right now around systems thinking. Every wave has agile thinking, creative thinking. There's a real systems thinking mindset right now for the people putting all these systems together, because we are living in a system world. There are consequences, 1, 2, 3 orders of consequences to decisions. It's not just, the code looks good, ship it. Whoa, it broke 5 other things.
Exactly.
So there's a whole, even in the younger generation, a huge mindset. What would be your advice for folks out there who are trying to disrupt in a positive way innovation? How should they think like a systems person?
Yeah, systems thinking is really hard. You have to throw yourself in it and learn, or at least that's how I learned. It's not, meaning I don't think you can teach it in school necessarily. You can pick it up watching. Nowadays you can watch YouTube videos or whatever to learn it. But this is what's going to separate the winners, if you will, is the system thinking. Like I mentioned earlier. Do you have ephemeral little agents? How do you put these agents together? That's going to become our jobs, and the ones who are successful will figure out a way to orchestrate this. Because think about the complexity, right? Different models are good for different use cases. Everything is multimodal. And the cool stuff is only the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole, how do you meet SLAs? So the humans that can actually think through this in a better fashion and not just rushing into let me keep launching stuff, I think will do well. So we take a more That's the approach
Of
we
course,
take.
the opposite. Put new stuff on the network, so throwing up all kinds of problems. Great mindset. Since you brought up the iceberg, I think of like the shark fin, the iceberg. We used to put those on slides, like cost of ownership. Cost of ownership now is calculated differently. How do you value a success of a project? This has come up a lot in a lot of the business conversations we have, is whether you're a CFO approving a CapEx or OpEx expenditure for more GPUs, or a business person saying, hey, I want to implement this end-to-end project that's complex, but automatable, it's
Yeah.
gettable, we can do it, we can attain the goal. How do you look at the ROI now? The old days was TCO calculators, how much do we pay, what's the payback? Now you're in a world now where there's all this new data. You don't need to apply mechanisms and old forecasts of what we think it might be. You can actually get real data. How do you look at this whole TCO, valuation?
So this is is a complicated one. There's so much data. There are, in fact, startups in San Francisco that do exactly this. They can tell you, like that agent can tell you, the odds of success for each of these companies and where you should invest, et cetera, which is what we used to hire a bunch of people to go data mine and do things. So I think
Cost optimization, like the do ITs, they're turning into much more financial engineering.
exactly. And
firms.
so valuations are going to be very different coming. I mean, you hear people making claims that a one-person team will be $1 billion company, but you need people to buy it, though. So we're going to see I don't have an easy answer for you.
All
on
right,
the
so open source, you mentioned Linux Foundation, OpenSearch, love what the work you do. We cover KubeCon since the beginning. We'll be at OSS as well covering it. Love that community. Where's that go? Because you're seeing now open source evolve.
Yeah.
The controversy around HashiCorp, others. I don't think it's a bad thing. Personally, I think it's a good thing. I think the game is still the same. Are there any insights that you see around how open source can continue to mature? Because obviously it's steady state now. It's the key area for innovation for developers and bringing teams together. Commercialization paths, the future of open source. What's your vision on
It's
that?
an interesting thought. I think it also ties into governance because it's IP you're putting out there.
Yeah.
And everything you put out there, something's going to start learning from it. It's no longer, so I think this is a complex question about how open source evolves. Personally, I'm with you. I'm a big advocate and proponent for open source, and I think we should all collaborate together. There's so much goodness that comes out of it because you get to see different types of use cases. Like we've seen the momentum behind moving this to Linux Foundation and the innovation that's coming from it. But I see, like I'm a big, like I read.
You mentioned Java because you were involved in Java. If you think about Java, why that was built. It was built for a whole nother use case.
And
it
it's still
became a
like-
standard.
yeah.
And it's got a renaissance because there's a lot of great chatter going on. People love Java.
And I can tell you, John, when I was running it, we stagnated for a little bit when we got to Oracle, and I think it was JDK 8 or something. We got stuck. Then we picked up the velocity, and I remember people telling me, this is like COBOL. No, it ain't. Look at it now.
Yeah.
Sure that we have Rust and Go and other stuff. We still have Erlang for all that. But
Can agents can learn Java?
they can learn Java. They can transcode, compile, from COBOL to Java. These things already
I think
exist.
Swami told me about a year ago, 2 years ago maybe, that you guys rewrote, upgraded the Java stack.
Oh my God, it was.
Talk about that.
Yeah, the Log4j when it came, we were able. I've forgotten the stats of exactly
pretty
how much
impressive.
it's very impressive. My teams benefited from that. We were just automating everything, and this was before models got to where they are today. And so the benefit is just unbelievable.
I bring that up because we kind of riffed down that road, but that is a highlight of the operational dynamics
exactly.
going on. You don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
There could be a threat. It could be another 0 day. Something could happen. You got to
the
be
ability to mitigate it,
rewrite
as quick,
code, upgrade
fast
code bases.
Yes,
That's what's
that
happening
That
now.
is one of the classic use cases. It worked, lend itself really well to automation from GenAI.
Okay, great conversation. Since it's halftime in the year, halftime report on theCUBE for AWS, look back 6 months since the last reInvent and now look forward. What's happened in the past 6 months in your world and what's your focus going into reInvent?
Yeah, so in the past 6 months, like I said, we've launched a lot of these capabilities that are already helping customers and we're loving everything that's going on. The next phase, I think, is going to be how do we make all this usable? It's all the things you and I discussed. In 6 months, next time I see you at reInvent, we're going to have so many more agents. We're going to have so many more tools. We're going to be able to provide not just AWS investigations, but go beyond that to meet the customer at whatever lake they are using, et cetera. So we are working on a bunch of these things as I speak. And so super exciting times is what I would say.
So two words I hear a lot these days. One is unlock, okay, and automate the agents. What's your reaction to the unlocking term? Because it's unlocking value. Where do you see the unlock going into the benefits of your?
I think it'll be both. Both will be true. It unlocks a whole lot of value in new use cases every day. Like we mentioned the Log4j one that Swami mentioned to you. But we're seeing further use cases now. Like you can just sit there and say, show me. Like there's so many benefits to it. You can listen to it in a car drive, like all of that. So you'll unlock a whole lot of potential for security use cases, observability use cases, et cetera. But at the same time, the velocity is going to be incredible.
Well, you're in the velocity stream. You got all the data. Congratulations on all the work. Thanks for the update.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on theCUBE. Okay, it's the halftime report. The data's flowing. If you don't have access to the data, know what's going on, then you can't manage the agents, you can't manage the infrastructure, you can't manage the applications. That's the takeaway. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. Thanks for watching.